on, everybody? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine, and your host of the RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs and all-around tech guru. What's up, Greg?
Hey, Vinny, before I say anything, I'm just going to say how hard it was for me not to do Lumberg again.
Oh,
like literally, I think if you listen back to how I just said it, you can still hear it a little bit. It's stuck in my head now. So I'm trying really hard not to go, hey, Vinny.
Well, I told you the first time you did that, I was like, are you all right, dude? Do we need to have a talk?
So that's all on you. Like that is just in my head now.
Right on, man. Well, as you know, today we have a very special episode, a very special guest. Honestly, I thought long and hard about this introduction, and truthfully, I would be doing him a disservice if I tried to, start listing any accolades or milestones in his career. I just better let him do it himself because, frankly, I could spend the entire podcast just doing that because his career is so prolific. And if you've already read the title, it's none other than Ed Justice Jr. So without no further ado, Greg, can we bring him on, please? How are you, Ed?
Hey, I'm doing great. Yeah, just what, car guy's good enough. A guy who was blessed to be born into the right family and loved what they did. And I didn't decide to be a doctor or some other very worthwhile career for sure, but I decided to stay in the car world. It just captured my heart.
Well, I think you were born with it in your blood. It was already, that was decided before you were born, probably.
It could have been. Yeah, it could have been. Yeah. I know my dad highly encouraged it, but it didn't take a lot. You know what I mean? I really, I'm just blessed. I mean, I always jokingly say to people, the old saying is you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. And that saying generally is a reference to the crazy aunt or uncle you have to deal with at Thanksgiving. Okay. And in my case, though, it's a positive thing. I mean, I couldn't pick my family, but, God placed me into this family, and I'm forever grateful for it.
Well, frankly, Ed, I think that everybody's grateful for you and for that because you've impacted, millions with your work. Like I said in our intro, I couldn't even begin to start listing those off. I would love for you to give us the abridged version of your background, how this lifelong career got started, and bring us to where you're at currently.
Well, my dad and uncles, of course, they had an interesting life themselves. I always jokingly say they were like Forrest Gump. I mean, in the film Forrest Gump, he just, every time you turn around, he's at some historic thing. And that's the way my dad and uncles were, truly, in the automotive field. I mean, we moved to Florida from California, and they're there before NASCAR is born, and they turn out to be the first sponsors in NASCAR. My uncle was the first employee for Frank Curtis building race cars. And then my dad went to work there. And then when they went to Florida, Frank offered him to sponsor his car at Indianapolis in 1950, which would make them the first sponsor of Curtis's house car. They win the race. They had sponsored cars prior to that. Our first appearance at Indy as an active role was 1946, the first race after the war. And so in that same year in 1950, when they won the Indy 500, NASCAR had the first 500-mile stock car race, the Southern 500, on the first super speedway that NASCAR had, which was only not a 2-mile track. It was Darlington. And we won that. And so my dad and my uncles won the Indy 500 and the Southern 500 in the same year, and my dad was 29 years of age. So I always jokingly say, wow. So now for my next trick, I mean, now what do you do? I mean, it's like, okay, I'm ready to retire now. I've climbed the mountain. But, and they were Don Garlett's first paid sponsor. And So anyway, that's what I was born into. And so, when I was growing up, my dad would say to me, he'd say, "Hey, Ed, what are you doing this weekend?" And I'd say, "Well, I think I'm going to go down the street and play with my friends, Steve or whoever." And he'd go, "I don't think that's a good idea." He says, "If you do that, you're going to probably get in trouble." Because, he was pretty rambunctious, I guess is a nice way to put it, when he was growing up. And I clearly was. And he goes, "You're going to come with me, because if you come with me, you're going to learn something." And so, not like he was dragging me, but I'd go with him. And so I grew up around my dad's contemporaries, and how that, a lot of them were Johnny Parsons, the 50 Indy winner, he'd retired, Roger Ward. I mean, you name it, Mickey Thompson. All these people were our friends. And my dad and I were checking out at the hardware store that in Monrovia one day. It was Ole's, which was, they're out of business now, but they used to be a pretty big concern here in Southern California. And two people ahead of us was Mickey and Trudy Thompson. And "Hey, how you guys doing?" "Yeah, And so after we check out, and he tells us about the water barrier idea he had with those K-rails filled with water. I mean, and we're standing in the home center. And so anyway, I did, I really never gave it much thought. And then as I matured, then I realized, hey, you know what? I've been around all these legends, and they're just my dad's friends and nice guys and all that. And one time we were walking down the aisle at the SEMA show, my oldest daughter, Courtney, who works at the company also. And I was with a guy, and he was from one of the magazines. And as we're walking down the aisle, guys were saying, "Hey, Ed, how you doing? Hey, Ed, how you doing?" And, talking, and we were getting, stopped every so many feet. And the guy said to Courtney, he said, "Does your dad know anybody under 80 years of age?" And I realized, these were all my friends. And I mean, I had friends my age too, but I had my dad's friends. So that's what I grew up in. And so, I mean, I was just very lucky. And my dad, I mean, I was his shadow. And I know I've talked to other people where they go, "Yeah, God, I wish I had a dad like that," because my dad didn't really want to spend time with me. And when I hear that, I feel bad, because I mean, my dad literally growing up was one of my best friends. And trust me, we didn't always get along, okay? And it wasn't always pretty, okay? Because it's still a father-son relationship. And I mean, my dad, a few times he used the waist belt on me. I mean, to correct a few disagreements. And I mean, I'm no worse for wear. You know what I mean? I haven't had to spend a small fortune on counseling to this point, anyway.
Well, Ed, so was there when did the point where you well, I guess, how did you transition that life of spending time with your father around, race car drivers, race cars, just in that world? How did you transition to, making that a career?
Well, my dad had hopes that I would go into the business. Obviously, I mean, and so he encouraged it, and I started working at the company way before you can legally work at the company, unless you're a family member. Okay.
Right.
Because, Ed Roth had 5 sons, and if they were not his sons, the way he worked his sons, he would be thrown in jail. Okay. But family members can be like subservient labor to, I mean, it's, short of beating on people or whatever. But anyway, you can make your family do work that you can't make an employee do. So anyway, I started working in the plant. I mean, I've worked every position in the darn company, from on the production line to the warehouse to loading rail cars on days like we're having now, 90 plus 100-degree days. Man, inside a rail car, man, I tell you what, that's tough. That's tough duty. But you're young, and I mean, I've got stories I could tell you about driving the forklift with product several blocks down the street illegally, underage, no license, and my dad or one of my uncles saying it'll be all right. But it was a different time for sure.
Right.
I mean, but so I enjoyed the business side, and and at the same time I had the love of photography, and which was instilled, or let's put it this way, instilled and also encouraged by my dad. I mean, at one time I wanted to be a sign painter, believe it or not. I've always loved art, and I had a fascination with signs, which I find out on Instagram that I'm not the only one. There are a lot of dedicated sites to signs.
Oh, yeah.
And sign art is just amazing, and like posters behind me and all that. And I am a graphic designer too. And a lot of people, when you start listing this stuff, they think like I have some sort of attention span problem. But I mean, I was raised to, if you wanted to do something, go after it. And a lot of the people that I was raised around were like that. I mean,
Right.
so anyway, I spent a summer at a sign painter shop as a young guy, as a flunky gopher. And my dad went down there and asked him if I could hang out, and I'd empty the trash cans and go on the truck and see how they painted signs and all that. And at the end of the summer, the guy who owned the sign shop, I learned a lot, by the way. I mean, I really learned a lot. And when I talk to sign painters and I start talking about the craft and all that, they're like, how do you're not a sign painter, but you spend a summer, even by accident, you learn something. But so I at the end of the summer, he said to me, he says, Ed, let me tell you something. You don't want to become a sign painter. He said, become an artist. You sit at an art table, you do the same thing we do, and you get paid more money. And now I don't know whether my dad put him up to that. I've always wondered. And so this is like the word coming from the mountain. You go, hey, the guy's telling me this. This is like the cherished secrets, And so that's what fostered me to go into graphic design as a young guy. Well, I like that. But then when my dad exposed me to photography, and I got my first camera at 12 years of age, because I asked for a camera at Christmas time, and I got a rangefinder style, not a Leica, but same same technology, the rangefinder where you bring the images together and focus it, and it was a fixed lens, and I was going to the races. I mean, I was going to races all the time, every weekend, multiple times a week, sometimes during the week to Ascot or whatever. And I was taking my camera along, and I thought, hey, you know what? I really like this because I get to go out and create things rather than sitting at a table. And that, even though I've sat at a table a lot doing artwork, that just really appealed to me. And so, I was consumed also by reading the magazines and seeing other professional photographers work. And how did he do that? And, and it was, all of this was such a mystery to me. And of course, it was in a different time, manual focus, manual exposure. You really needed to understand, film speed, f-stop, and shutter speed, the triangle of the exposure and all that. And so I applied. I found out that they were at my junior high. They were going to have an experimental class that they had an opening for 3 people, guys or gals. and it was going to be a dark room, and you're going to do the photography for the junior high. And I came home and I told my dad about it, and he said, Ed, who's in charge of this? And I said, there's two teachers. And he said, you've got to tell them at least once a day, each of those teachers, that you want to be one of those three people. He said, you've got to stay on this. I mean, do you really want it? And I said, no, I really want to do this. And he goes, you've got to do this. If you really want it, you've got to let them know how bad you want it, and just keep staying on them. And I did. And I became one of the three guys.
Not to interrupt you, but around what time frame was this? You're in junior high?
Yeah, so I'm 13, 14, 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I had access to a dark room then. Well, it wasn't long till my dad said, you know what, I'd like to do darkroom stuff too. And he said, let's build a dark room at home. So we took an old grape stake fenced in area which had our pool equipment in it, the filter and the heater and all that, and just all that stuff that you need for a pool. And we constructed a house. We called it the pool hut, and created a dark room, put in a counter, bought a Bessler enlarger, which is, still is one of the primo enlargers. Got the deals, and I was learning how to do a dark room at school, and I'd come home and I could do the dark room at home, and started buying 35 millimeter film in bulk and loading my own cassettes. So I was saving money there. I was trying to cut corners every way I could, because I was trying to earn money. I'd work in the summertime. That's how I bought my first Nikon with a motor drive. Was I worked in the plant during the summertime and bought it. And then Peterson at that time, which was Hot Rod and all the magazines, now called the 10 Group. Peterson didn't buy a lot of 35 millimeter photography. Pete Peterson, Robert E. Peterson, liked good quality. He wanted his magazines to be good quality. So they sort of mandated that it should be 2.25 by 2.25, which is what we call medium format. And so consequently, the best 2.25 by 2.25 camera to shoot action was a Hasselblad. And that's a big step, because in that era, Hasselblad and Leica were the two top cameras. Hasselblad in the medium format, of course, it was the camera they took to the moon, and Leica in the 35 millimeter format. More
not to interrupt you again, Ed, but so where are you getting this information from about what they prefer at the magazines?
By going to the magazine. I didn't have my driver's license yet. My one uncle, Gus, had been paralyzed in a car wreck at 21, and so he drove a car with hand controls, and my dad and uncle made the first set of hand controls for him before they were ever commercially available. And now they're commercially available. And I drove his car quite a few times with hand controls. You can totally drive a car with hand controls very competently. In fact, maybe more competently than some of the people I see that don't drive. It's true. I mean, I'm telling you. So anyway, my uncle, I had a dad, and I had two sort of pseudo dads with my other two uncles. And if I said to my uncle Gus, hey, could you run me over to Peterson, and I'll go up to the magazines and talk to the art director, he'd do it. And traffic wasn't bad. And so we'd go over to Peterson Publishing on the corner of La Cienega and Sunset, and the building's gone now. And
you're an LA guy. You were born and raised in LA, right?
Yeah. I love LA.
Yeah,
I do
fantastic.
love LA.
I love Southern California.
Yeah, I've driven all over LA, and my dad knew all LA, and I grew up driving all over LA with my dad. And I mean, when I drive somewhere, I take a different route.
So you were talking about how your uncle would take you down to Peterson. You would go in there and talk to the director.
Art directors, yeah. So and that's how I learned about the 2.25. And my dad in the beginning talked my way onto the line at the drag strips. Irwindale was in our backyard. I mean, it's literally maybe a half mile behind me here.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay. And from our office today. And so I got out on the line, and I was a young guy, and uh, I made friends quick, and my dad introduced, said, "Hey, this is my son Ed," and at first it started out me needing to get shots of our cars. The next thing you know, I was shooting everything, and then I was making prints, and I'd go through the pits and I'd sell them to the teams, for a couple bucks an 8x10, which those things are worth a lot more today now, collectible wise, particularly if they got my stamp on the back and all that, from what they tell me. But anyway, so a guy by the name of Mert Miller, he was the track photographer at Irwindale, and he became one of my mentors. And he shot Leica and Hasselblad, and that's how I got exposed. I was shooting with his Leicas. He had M3s and M4s, and he was the one that instructed me, taught me a lot of the tricks in the dark room. We were really good friends, and I mean, he also drove, so now here was another way I could get to the races, and so that's how I became friends with the different photographers. But like I said the other day on one of my Instagram posts, you just don't go. And by 14, I was selling pictures to the magazines, and
Wow.
literally was, quote, pro.
Right.
Which is a very loose term, sort of misused by a lot of people. Self-appointed, term that people throw on themselves. Hey, I'm a professional. Yeah, well, the only time you can really trust that is when it's a surgeon, I think, or something like that. Otherwise, yeah, even then, I know, even then, yeah. But anyway, you want to make sure you didn't go to some medical school in some island in the Caribbean. Anyway, but anyway, so you had to earn your chops. You just don't show up and, hey, everybody, here I am. Aren't I great? And these people were all considerably older than me.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember who you first worked with? Like they were the first ones to kind of give you a shot and use your photos and
Oh yeah, Drag Racing USA, which was a big magazine in the day, was run by Mike Doherty over on Riverside Drive. I sold a lot to him. CarCraft, Don Green was one of the guys at CarCraft. If you go back in the old issues, I mean, what was it?
Did it ever? Did you? I mean, you had friends that were your age. You were still in school. Did it ever strike you as like, this is kind of unique that I have the opportunity to do this, and I'm creating these opportunities for myself?
Yeah, but not really, maybe in the fullest sense. I mean, it was a thrill, to sort of have a goal and to work towards it and achieve it. I think if you're that mindset, the minute you achieve that goal, you're on to the, quote, next one. Otherwise, again, like my dad at 29 winning those races, otherwise, well, you just hang it up. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. And I mean, I shot with, they're still my friends to this day. We became very good friends. Steve Reyes, who's I consider to be the dean of drag racing photographers. I mean, if some car blew up or flipped or took off in the air, we'd look and where's Reyes? And then he'd be coming back from the tail end of the top end of the drag strip. And hey, did you get that? Oh yeah, I got it. And I mean, this is when shooting back then was just, if you didn't do it, it was the great unknown. Well, we didn't know what we got until a day later or that evening if it was black and white.
This is something Greg and I have talked about a few times with different guests, and that's that people who have a tendency to be into hot rods have other interests and hobbies, and they're just as fanatical about those as well. It sounds like for you, photography was that thing. Were you guys doing a lot of experimentation at that time with different setups? I know, obviously, being
Oh yeah.
a high school student, maybe your funds were limited, but uh, were there guys that were brand myopic who said, "Oh, I only shoot with Leica," and other guys, "I only shoot with
Well,
Nikon"? How'd that
yeah.
go?
Frankly, the dominant cameras at the racetracks in that era were primarily Nikon and or Hasselblad. You didn't see Leicas per se at the racetrack. Uh, they were more of a press general news camera, shot some of the most iconic pictures in history. But and so did Hasselblad, for that matter. Hasselblads were used for like 90% of the Life magazine covers,
Oh, wow.
which Life magazine, I mean, that was it.
Big as it
And
gets.
so, yeah, it was that, and in that era, it was as big as it gets. Life was big, and so yeah, I mean, Canon was not a factor at that point, although they were around.
Well,
And
what was that
Canon
like?
made the big push later, and I've shot Canons too. I mean,
Well, Leica is
no
now
camera.
known for being, on the upper tier. Was that the case back then?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Always known for high quality optics, glass, and before the image ever gets to the negative, the film or the sensor, the digital sensor, it goes through glass.
Right.
And glass has a great effect of coloration, chromatic aberration. The way lenses do distort the image, and if you've worked on Photoshop and you use a correction, you don't really realize it till you hit that correction for a lot of people, that all of a sudden, I mean, you can see it the easiest on a wide angle when you tilt it at an angle. If you shoot a wide angle level, and a lot of photographers, when they're doing landscape, they'll use a level, you get the least amount of distortion. But the minute you start cranking it up or down, that's when you're going to get things going like this or that, and or if you get close or whatever. And sometimes you use that distortion to your benefit. I mean, I a lot of times I like wide angle distortion. I think it's a thing. But as far as experimenting, let me answer a question, or that point, because it's interesting. I'll tell you a couple things. So company comes out with a star filter, and everything had to be done in the camera then. No, you didn't have this Photoshop
Right.
effect. Okay, so if you shot a tripod shot at night of the dragster sitting there with the flames and everything, and you see these stars, that was done by a filter that had been cross-cut.
Interesting.
And so when the light hit it, it would cause these stars, these flares, and otherwise the filter was so close to the lens, it would blur out the lines, but you get these stars. So, somebody discovers this, they make this star filter, and one guy brings it out. Immediately we see that picture, and of course everybody else gets a star filter, and that becomes the flavor of the month. and then of course, I'll give you two other examples. They're really good examples. And I don't know who the first was on this. It wasn't me. But all of a sudden you see this shot, and it's the car sitting at the line again, and there's the moon. And you go, the moon wasn't in that position that night. How the heck did he do that? Now, again, not Photoshop. Photoshop, that's a couple click thing. So
Right.
with a Hasselblad, you could double expose very easily. Okay. It had removable film back. Okay. And you'd put a slide in, and the backs typically held 12 shot rolls, 12 or 24. That was it. I mean, I know guys that 24 shots just when a car goes by now. Okay. And 35 millimeter was 36 shots. I mean, really, seriously, we call that technique today spray and pray. I mean, it's like going hunting with a machine gun. I promise
Right.
you're going to bring something back. Okay. I mean, you will be a good shot with a machine gun. I mean, it's just, like the guy says, I'll write my name in the wall with the machine gun. So anyway, with the Hasselblad, you could shoot a picture on a full moon night, position the moon up in, say, the upper left corner, put the slide in, take that back off, and put it in your camera bag. Go to the drags. You're going to do that exposure. You know what the exposure is because it's got to be right. Put the back on, slide the slide out, and click. And now you've got, and because where the moon wasn't, it's black. You now can expose that. Because where it's black, the film didn't really get exposed. And so, boom, you got a negative, or what we shot was transparency. That's what print always loved. And now you got a transparency that's got the moon and the car, and hey, it looks like you just shot it for real. So taking that double exposure idea, we would then take, and when funny cars finally came along with the liftoff bodies, because I started when they were not liftoff, and we would shoot the car with the body off, put the slide in, take the back off, recock the shutter on the camera, put the back on, take the slide out, put the body on the car, click, and now you've got a picture where it looks like you can see right through the body to the frame. And so, that was a base, one pretty easy exposure. You just take whatever the exposure was to shoot one good picture and you'd have it. You cut it in half, because otherwise the ground would be overexposed. And if you didn't do it, and see, well, anyway, slide film is very much like digital. Transparency is like digital. You do not want to overexpose. You want to underexpose to get to the technical side. And I don't want to get into this, but negative is exactly the opposite. Negative, it's okay to overexpose. But so a lot of people on digital, if you overexpose, you will get what we call a blown out section, and you can't recover data where there is no data. And when it's blown out, there's no data. So anyway.
Well, no, I totally geek out on this stuff, Ed, because I think I'm probably part of the last generation. I can't even say generation, but when I was in high school, we still had what was called a regional occupation center, and I went there for graphic design. And one of the things that I really loved was the photography portion, because it was right on the cusp of when digital was becoming advanced.
Yeah.
But they still had a dark room. They still had film cameras. I remember learning about photography on a Minolta Maxim 7000, and later I bought a Canon AE1, of course.
Minolta made great cameras. That's Sony bought Minolta, and that's why the Sony mount is the Minolta mount.
Exactly. And so I have a deep appreciation for it, and I don't think many people in the industry nowadays know so much about film. So it's cool to hear about it from you.
Yeah, that's a surprising thing, though. I'll tell you my feelings on film and the generational thing. I actually find a lot of people like you that really are into film. And I go to these car events, and I'll be walking by a bunch of young guys, and I'll go, hey, that Mamiya C330, which is a interchangeable lens, twin lens reflex camera. It's like a Rolleiflex, only you can change the lenses. Alex Wallerty, who shot for the magazines, shot one of those. He was the only guy. It was like a much cheaper than a Hasselblad. Okay, good camera. And I said to this guy, I go, that camera is like brand new. Where did you get that camera? Oh, it was my grandfather's. I go, oh, you shoot film? He goes, yeah, I love film. Well, so I get asked all the time, do you shoot film? And I will tell you, I've talked to so many legendary photographers. I mean, I'm talking big time legends, and they all feel the same way I do for the most part. We've been there, we've done that. It's a good thing to know. I really love to see people like yourself and others shoot film, learn film, because it's a great foundation. It absolutely helps enhance your talent for digital. But in today's world, when it comes to photography, I could riddle off some big time fine art photographers. There's no reason to shoot film. Now, if a guy wants to shoot film, again, that's your choice.
Right.
But film is a softer medium than digital. And we have now moved into an era where we have been trained to like things that are a little bit sharper. We keep going more and more that way. High def, 4K, 8K. And you know what? It's like if you go to buy a movie, you buy a old VHS tape or do you buy a, Blu-ray?
Oh, you're gonna download a
Yeah,
file.
I mean, you look at the old videos, and I mean, they're really soft. I mean,
yeah.
when you watch some of the videos on YouTube that are low res, it's like, okay, I mean, you suffer through some of the stuff.
You're talking about videos that are 4 or 5 years old. They're not that old.
No, exactly. So, first of all, there's so many reasons why digital is good. In the beginning, I didn't like digital because it was too low res. And
Right.
I mean, a good friend of mine, Pete Byro, who was a legendary car and driver, photographer, Goodyear, et cetera, he bought an early digital camera, a little pocket digital, and he worked for me at that time, and because we shot together for years at Indy and a lot of places. And I see the pictures and I go, Pete, that's just garbage. I said, he goes, yeah, no, but it's coming along. And my first major league digital camera was a Nikon D1. And it was $4,000, and which was a great sum of money now, and even a bigger sum of money then. And I'll be quite honest, it was a good camera, but it wasn't a great camera.
Right.
I mean, it didn't get skin tones real well. These cameras today, if you spend, relatively decent amount of money, they're pretty phenomenal. And I mean, and Leica's known, their sensors are just tweaked for a different color. And I shoot a lot of black and white. I own a Leica monochrome, which for people who don't realize, they actually make a camera that only shoots black and white. And it's not cheap. It's really good, but it's like a custom built camera. I mean, how big is a market for a camera that only shoots black and white? Because most people go, hey man, if I'm going to pay that, I want color too. I mean, and if I want black and white, I'll just turn the color picture. But what they do is they take the same digital sensor and get rid of the color splitting off of it, and so the resolution and the tonal range is increased dramatically. And it's for people, it's for people like me who really love the art of black. I mean, black and white's been my life.
It's so dramatic and beautiful. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I have an Instagram account dedicated to just black and white and shooting the Leicas I own, all digital.
Is that separate from your main account, Ed?
Yeah, that's the Leica account is at Leica Justice, Leica.
Oh, cool.
Gice. And then my main account on Instagram is at Ed Justice, Justice Junior, Jr. And as you know, first of all, when I got on Instagram, a buddy of mine, who was a producer for NBC, said to me, you need to be on Instagram. And he said, it's made for a guy like you. And he said,
God he told you that.
Yeah, it's all about photography and all that. And I go, really? And he goes, yeah. Well, when I went on, I did it like everybody. And then I at a certain point, I go, these a picture and this is, Bob or whatever. I go, I got so much more to offer than that. And so I started doing what I call long form Instagram posts, which are supposed
Love.
to, yeah, thank you. Well, it's supposed to be what you don't do.
I know it doesn't fit the model at all, but
No.
they're fantastic, and I think people are receptive to it because it's so different. It's so much of Instagram and just social media in general is just a snapshot, and then you don't get a whole lot of backstory.
Yeah.
Yours, they do a deep dive because you're at the end of the day, you're a historian, and you're offering something that people don't get elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I felt the same way when I did radio. It's educate and entertain. You can't just educate because people will tune out. And entertainment, yeah, people, while they're being entertained, if you can educate them too, then that's really a much more dimension. And so I sometimes, Instagram gives you a pretty good writing limit. Far greater. I don't know what the total number count is. I know Twitter's 140, but I don't know what Instagram's is. I've never taken the time to figure it out. But I do bang over that sometimes, where I have to say continued below, and then I continue it in a comment. And I try not to do that. But if and look at, regardless of how long I go, there's always stuff that I'm cutting out. Editing is the toughest job in media.
Exactly.
And so I only do one a day. I don't. I'm not going to load up somebody's feed. I've followed some people where I get like 4 or 5, 6 deals. It's like, hey, we all are sort of challenged for time, and I feel, my deal is pretty simple. One a day, basically every day. And I dedicate the time. I write it either at lunch, or I write it in the morning when I'm having breakfast, or I write it when I get home at night. And it doesn't interfere with my quote day job running Justice Brothers, which keeps me busy. And
Sort of therapeutic, almost like a diary.
yeah, it is. It's like a blog. It is like a blog, really. But blogs tend to wear people out. Most people can't keep it up. And I've been doing this now for, God, I don't know how many years. And you go on people's sites and you see the blog, and the last post may be 2014. You go on a lot of people's site, and when you hit the blog link, it might be 2014 the last time you see that they posted, because it takes real discipline. And this is one thing I learned through a lot of things I've done in my life, and definitely doing a weekly 2-hour radio show, that was nationally syndicated on XM and all that. That's discipline. And because I worked 6 days a week, the radio show being one day, for over 20 years. And so anyway, so now how I come up with what I post on Instagram is, for the most part, total serendipity. Seriously, I don't know a lot of times what I'm going to put on that night. And I'll just be going through photos, and I'll see these photos going through the archive or whatever, or I'll go through an old magazine or so, and I go, hey, you know what? That's sort of fun. I haven't touched that. And I try to, as you know, following me, I do drag racing, then I'll do road racing, and then I'll do IndyCar, and then I'll do stock car. And then I'll do, like right now, I did a couple posts related to Car Week in Pebble Beach, because this is and obviously I'm going to be doing some posts related to Indy, because they just, they're the elephant in the room. You can't ignore them.
That's really what I'm appreciative of on your page, is that it's so diverse. I'm not just into one aspect of motorsports, and I think most people are the same way. And so you get a wide breadth of information and beautiful imagery. So how do you have your archives categorized, Ed?
I also own the archives of about in my archives, let's put it this way, I've got about 10 other photographers that are no longer with us that were contemporaries of mine, but they were quite a bit older. These are, again, my older friends. And for the most part, those have been categorized. My one friend, it's unbelievable. He was a bachelor. He did it right. If somebody's looking for a picture, you tell me the race. I got an archive. It covers from the early 50s to present day. And so you tell me a race, a series, whatever, Indy, Le Mans, in fact, and tell me a year, and I can tell you whether I've got images from it, and including, yeah, I mean, an off-road. I mean, Parnelli Jones and the big Ole, which I'm going to do a post
No
on
way.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I got so much great stuff. I called Parnelli today. It's his birthday today, and
Oh man, that's awesome.
you know, that's his favorite car. I got to tell you, but besides the '63 winning Indy car, you know, he
More than the
sold
Mustang?
the Trans Am Mustang.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, because he built Big Ole. They developed that car. The Mustang was done by Bud Moore.
Oh,
And
okay.
funny story on that. I was talking to Eddie Wood last week of the Wood brothers, and I said to him when we were on the phone together, I said, you know, Parnelli always joked that he'd get in the car and he'd say to Bud, because Bud was a NASCAR guy, Purple Heart, D-Day survivor. I mean, amazing gentleman. And he'd say to Bud, hey, so Bud, what do we got going in the motor here? And Bud would say, look, you're the driver. You just drive the car, okay? You let me worry about the motor. And Eddie goes, that's just so Bud. And he'd tell Parnelli, and Parnelli one time when they were acid dipping the cars, you know, and cars, you know, like Penske's, a famous story is that the roof was so thin they put the vinyl top on, and
Yeah.
and people thought they did that for some aerodynamic, you know, advantage. One time Parnelli said, hey Bud, the fender seems a little thin. He goes, just get in the car and you drive the car, okay? He didn't want Parnelli or George Fulmer, the teammate, to know anything about what was going on. I guess he lived by the rule of less people that know about what you're doing, the less chance there is that it gets exposed. You know what I mean?
So
And
were you? I mean, you were down in the paddock, like with these guys, like taking photos of these guys.
yeah. You know,
Oh
like
man.
I posted this one the other day. That's
What, can you tell us what week that is, Ed? And we'll Greg has it in staging. He'll throw it up on screen for us.
that's July 26th is the day. That's Dan Gurney and Leonard Wood at the
Amazing.
2015 Indy 500, the 99th Indy 500. And yeah, it's the one there in the center. And I actually spent the entire 500 with Dan Gurney and his sons.
God.
Oh no, it
That's
was
awesome.
great. You know, this will be the first Indy 500 I've missed in like 45 years.
Oh man.
And
Sorry
you
to
know,
hear
yeah, due to COVID and all that. But anyway, it's the world we're living in right now. But anyway, so Dan, who was a very good friend and a great guy, he went back, and this was going to be his. It wasn't stated this way, but you knew this would probably be the last time he went to Indy.
Right.
And so he you know, the guys, the family said, you know, Ed, you can hang with us the whole week. And I tell you, it's clearly one of the most memorable Indy 500s I've in my experience. And so that picture was taken down inside of turn one, right prior to the start of the race. And Leonard was there. And of course, Dan Gurney drove the Wood Brothers cars at Riverside many times and created such a win record out there that they nicknamed it the house that Gurney built, Riverside, sort of like Babe Ruth built Yankee Stadium.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. And that was just amazing. I mean, and then when we were up in the tower, and Dan and Al Unser Senior were laughing and having a fun time, and yeah, that female photographer, the one there at the top.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one. That was another one I was going to ask about.
That just was in the archive, and I made a point that you cannot shoot at a drag race like this anymore.
Yeah, man.
And I don't remember whose girlfriend or wife, or I don't know, but that got a lot of likes. What was it, 800 and some likes?
837 likes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the highest, but it definitely got a lot of likes.
Do you recall what the most likes you've gotten on a post has been?
Yeah, it's this. I'll tell you one that got high. It's way down. It's the Adams and Enriquez twin turbocharged dragster. It'll be located in the dead center as you go down, and see, there's pictures of the year we took Mike Reagan when his dad was president of the United States to Indy. That was interesting experience. And keep going. You're getting close, I think.
I just want to stop and look at all these.
Yeah, well, there's a story behind every one of them, and I try to.
Is that Pam? Yeah, it's got to be Pam.
Yep. We're getting close. It'll be okay. It's right below this road and track, couple below the road and track. Right there, dead center. Okay, so when I wrote the post, I couldn't remember whose car this was, and I thought it was maybe Diamond Jim Annan's car with Mike Snively. Well, I was wrong. It was Adams and Enriquez's car, and that motor was sitting in Hillborn injection up until a few years ago in the lobby, and had been there for years. And a guy by the name of Jim Latin bought it from what Don Enriquez told me, because I ran into Don at the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame this year. I inducted Larry Minor into the Drag Racing Hall of Fame, the Garlits, it's the only one, and down in Gainesville. That's gotten 15,000 likes, which is a lot for me. And people are just fascinated by that thing. And, the car, it was way ahead of its time. It had way too much horsepower. Don told me, he said, we could just never figure out a way to harness the horsepower. And, but look at those twin turbos, man, with that inlet on the front. And that's
nuts.
That's sitting in the staging lanes at Ontario Motor Speedway for the Super Nationals. And, it's funny. Now, I stumble across this picture to just show you how weird this works out. I stumble across that picture and I go, yeah, it's sort of interesting. I almost did not post that picture. I just thought, it is what it is and all that. But then for some reason it caught my fancy, and I go, well, maybe some people will get a kick out of this, because this is like one of those things you don't see every day, or maybe never have seen. A twin turbocharged Chrysler in a top fuel car, or the gas dragster or whatever it was class they were running, and my gosh, I mean, it's like one of the most popular posts I've ever done. Obviously, some of the clickbait stuff. Now, if you go up above that picture and you go two above road and track, and it's a burnout right there, real grainy. Right there, that one. Okay, now this is a good example of how technology has changed dramatically in the photography world. This was shot with a film that somebody discovered, and again, once one person did it, it was shared, and it was pretty open. We were not trying to hide the secrets from each other. This is what they called recording film. I think it was 2475 Kodak 2475 recording film, I think was the technical name. And it allowed us to shoot, it was 2475. It allowed us to shoot at 1600 ASA, which was like, whoa, wow, this is big time. Now understand, my Leica monochrome camera will shoot up to 100,000.
Good Lord.
100,000. Okay. And I will also say, people go, yeah, but it have a lot of noise and all that. I will tell you, 100,000 on that Leica monochrome is better than this film shot at 1600. That is amazing. Now, how high do I shoot for ISO, as they call it more popularly today? We used to call it ASA or film speed, whatever. It's all the same thing. When I'm at Daytona for the Rolex 24, I might shoot at, I don't know, 20,000. And it's just amazing. So this was state of the art at
No,
that
this
time.
incredible image. It almost looks like it almost looks something's going on with the exposure for sure. Where it it doesn't look like a stock image. It looks like it's been edited somehow.
Yeah, no, that's available light under the lights at Orange County with this recording film. And I've got another shot. It's not posted, that I shot a Schumacher, a side shot, when he was running his Barracuda. And but see, like that one of Robert Height down below there, to the no, right below that,
That's for
the Auto Club car.
there you go.
Yeah, that was shot with my Leica SL2, and that's a digital shot. And I mean, come on.
Fantastic image.
Yeah, I mean, it's super. I mean, the resolution is just
All the
killer.
blur that you get in the back, and then
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, well, you know, people people say, well, how do you do that? And I said, look, it's one of those deals. There's no substitute for experience. It's like, how do you become a good skeet shooter? You know what? You got to go out and burn through a lot of shells. You know.
Well, I suppose it goes back to what you were mentioning earlier. You know, these are skills you've developed over a career that's lasted a lifetime. And I do want to revisit some more photos, Ed. But
Yeah, no problem.
But you know, you cut your teeth with film. You know, and you were there for the transition to digital, so you know all these things. And
Yeah.
and I'm certainly not going to sit here and say, you know, that film is better. Just like you mentioned, you know, you can do so much more with digital nowadays. But you know, do you ever still bust out your film camera?
You know,
I mean,
I've thought about it lately because, you know, a long time ago I shut down my dark room, and although I do have film canisters, because some of the rolls of film that I acquired had been stored in a shed in Victorville, and they got a little dusty.
Mhm.
So I have to take these negatives in order to save them. I've got to take these negatives, load them onto a film reel, put them in, soak them, and wash that dust off, the dirt and dust, and then dry them, and then cut them. Now, thank God they were still in roll form, because it does aid in washing them off versus, you know, strips of 4 or 6 35 millimeters. But it's a tedious process, and I bite into it a little by little because it's just too big to do. So I'll do, you know, 6-10 rolls and hang them up. I actually have a shower here at the offices that's never been used as a shower, but it's a shower. And I hang them in there, and it's a dust-free environment. And so, but I found a place that will develop Tri-X roll and scan for like $5 a roll, which I cannot believe. And so I go, you know, if they develop it and they scan it, wow, you know what? I might, because look at shooting these rangefinder Leicas. They're not autofocus. I mean, this goes back to the roots, and that's sort of the reason why people like me shoot them. You gotta shoot the old way that I learned originally, and that is you focus on a spot and wait for the car to get to that spot, and then time your shutter release when it's in there. Now, the other thing is you shoot more stopped down, so you have greater depth of field so that the greater areas in focus, which cuts you some slack, gives you a little cushion. Now today, the big trend is to open the lens all the way up to like f 2.8, 3, 4, 5, if that's what the lens is, a 1.8, 1.4, f2, whatever, so that the background falls out of focus real quick. You know, that what
Right.
we call bokeh, or and but the reason why we can shoot that way today and have a pretty good success rate getting the shot is because of autofocus. I mean, the autofocus is so good that the target acquisition, when you paint the target and it, boom, it just nails the focus. You can have short depth of field. If you're shooting a manual focus camera, you can't do that. You cannot do that when like entry speed at Indianapolis is 240 miles an hour. Okay, turn 1, turn 3. And you know, when you're shooting manually, you really got to be on your game. And I will tell you for a mere fact that any of us shooting back in the day, from the absolute most skilled, your percentage of usable shots in a roll were not what they are now.
Right.
I mean, and I don't care. I mean, you could, I mean, Reyes, any of us, I mean, in a roll of 12 and a Hasselblad, if you got 3 good images, that was good. I mean, that really good. And if you got 4, particularly if you're shooting fast subjects and things happening, and
So without the instant feedback of like a digital display on the back of the camera, what were you doing? What adjustments were you making? Was it just going off of your previous experience? Like, okay, I'll
well,
kind of start here and make some adjustments. What I think might work.
first of all, we used a light meter, a
Right.
handheld light meter. I used the same light meter that pretty much all of us pros use, and that was a Gaussian Luna Pro. I still have it. I've got a bunch of other light meters too, but that Gaussian Luna Pro still works. It still works. I mean, it was a lifetime purchase, and it was not a cheap light meter. So, number one, you were using a light meter, and really, I've tried to find reasons why a light meter might work better for me in sports photography, not studio. Studio's different, okay? And again, I think it's good to know how to use a light meter and understand incident versus reflective, okay? Because most cameras read reflective. And when the problem with reflective light meter is that it'll read black as medium gray and it'll read white as medium gray. And so but if you shoot it with a raw file, you can fix all that. And so that shooting in raw format, that really truly does eliminate the need for a light meter. And I really don't know anybody shooting auto racing today. I mean, if I show up with one, I'll be the only guy.
Do you have any experience that you can speak to using a mirrorless versus the full frame digital cameras of today?
Yeah, the Leica SL2 is a mirrorless camera, and mirrorless in the beginning were not suited for
Any action photography.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, no, it just the lag was too much. You could get it done, but the digital SLRs in the beginning were just so superior. I
Do
mean,
you see that technology surpassing any?
yeah, I do, and you're starting to see the creep of mirrorless coming in, and it's to me, I really don't care. It's like I use Apple computers and I
Right.
use PCs. What will do the job the best? To me, it's a tool. And so I pick the tools that I think can help me achieve the best quality. And if that means that it's a camera that's got some sort of third bump on the side, I don't care. I really, it's like, give me the hammer that can do the job. I mean,
Right.
they go, yeah, but this is a really nice hammer. Well, yeah, but I don't, I want a hammer that will do the job, so a camera is a hammer. I mean, what a hammer is to a framer or a finished carpenter, a camera is to a photographer. And, I mean, I want good optics. I want, and I'll tell you another thing. So it's not uncommon in a weekend of racing that photographers today will come home with 3,000 to 4,000 shots.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how different that is from when we were shooting film. And this is not Ed talking. This is Ed talking, and also having the ability to look at 10 other photographers' archives and look at how their weekends were, which I've done with the images I own. It would be, I have, and I'm talking, these are top level photographers, go to a race, sometimes only shoot 3 rolls of 36.
Wow.
That's less than 150 pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. But come home with, the images from those 3 rolls you can sell for a lot of money, selling prints. Okay. And in the most cases, maybe 10 rolls, which is less than 400 pictures. That's 360 pictures. Okay. That's normal back in the day with film. That was normal. That's what I shot. That's what all my friends shot. I mean, and now we shoot 3,000, myself included. Now that's a lot of editing, but you know what? It's and clearly we're overshooting today. And I say this, I mean, because you know what? Doesn't cost anything. It's cheap.
Right.
You shoot stuff you don't even need because you know what? You can. And if somebody ever says, hey, do you got a picture of that car? And you go, yeah, I got, it's there. And so the quantity of stuff that we shoot now, and that's why on these bigger sensor cameras, like the SL2 is a 40 some mega pixel camera. Nikon makes some big sensor cameras, the D800 series. I find that a lot of the pros and a lot of people, they don't understand when I say this. I mean, I like the big sensor cameras, don't get me wrong, but I don't always use the big sensor. Sometimes I shoot it just to touch off to save space. Cause I've got a couple, now you're not going to believe this number. I've got a couple 58 terabyte RAIDs, 2 of them, to archive and to grow. 58 terabytes. I mean, that's a lot of storage space. Wow. I mean, when I installed them, the guys that installed them said, you really need this? I said, yeah, believe it or not. Because when I'm scanning the archive stuff too, those will be sometimes 40 megabyte files. Wow. So you start chewing away space, and it's far more than what I can put in the cloud. I mean, to load that in the cloud, yeah. God, my grandkids would still be waiting for it to load.
Ed, do you have any plans at the museum, which I haven't had a chance to visit yet, but I hopefully will soon. Yeah. Do you have any plans on doing anything with your archive there, as far as making what you're doing on Instagram and your social media available to the people that visit the museum?
I am. In fact, I'm working on a website right now. Since people are watching this, we'll give you a little inside deal. The website, I've got one through Photo Shelter, which is a very popular site for pros and even amateurs. You pay and you can put your gallery up, and then you can also have a store there. And they, I could build it otherwise, but like a lot of the other photographers, and Joe McNally, who's a famous Nikon photographer, he's got a photo shelter site. It's edjusticejr.photoshelter.com. And you can pull that up right now, and you'll see there's an archive of images. I don't know, somewhere just short of 300 maybe, of all different types of stuff, color, black and white,
Junior dot
photoshelter.com. And it's not totally done, but that gallery is up there, and the about is up.
Wow.
But the contact and all that isn't. They haven't done that yet. It's not totally done, and so that's why I haven't.
Wow.
This is the first place I've announced it. So anyway, you can go through stuff. Yeah, like the speed of sound rocket car that they ran out at Edwards.
What's going on?
That's Prudhomme.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's Prudhomme. I love that shot. I mean, that's 35 millimeter, and that's shot at Orange County. And Don's got a print of that hanging on his wall at his house that I signed.
This is almost.
I love that car. I love that car.
Me too.
The fire burnout in the upper left there, Herm Peterson. That was shot with a Hasselblad. That's an extremely sharp image. That was done on a turn-off road in Orange County drag strip. That was a setup shot that I did for a poster that we produced. We went down there, and they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" When we asked for permission to take some pictures on a turnout at Orange County, we said, "Well, we're going to do a fire burnout," and they said, "Well, you're not using gasoline, are you?" And we go, "Oh no. We wouldn't think of using gasoline. Are you kidding me? No, alcohol. Okay, yeah, because gas is just terrible for asphalt." and we go, "Yeah, no." They go, "Well, do you have an ambulance?" And we go, "Ambulance? Really? Oh yeah, no, you got to have an ambulance to run the car." "Oh really? No, we don't." "Well, Tony Nancy, see, he's out on the track right now, and he's got an ambulance. I mean, ask him, maybe he'll let you use his ambulance when he's done." And so we go out and ask Tony, who was a friend, "Hey, Tony, can we use your ambulance after you're done?" "Oh, heck yeah, no problem. I'll be done here pretty quick. I only got another couple runs." And so we go down on the turnoff. Now, look at that flame is only able to be achieved by gasoline. Alcohol is clear blue. Exactly. And particularly at daytime, you can't see it. I mean, they've had alcohol fires at an IndyCar race, and they didn't even know the pit was on fire. Okay. Exactly. But you see the black smoke, that's oil in the gasoline, meaning that's honest to God, full blown good gas right there. So people, and that's one frame. So people say, "Well, how do you shoot a picture like that?" Well, here's how we did it. Okay. So you put about a gallon of gas under each wheel in front of it while he's got the motor running. So you got to have this all planned out. I'm in position to shoot the picture. He rolls up into the gas. Okay. Then somebody on the right side of that image, one of the crew members, throws a match into the gas. And of course, it's a hot day and it's already fumed, and you get the nice big whoof, the concussion. And the minute that thing lights, somebody else in the front to my left gives him the signal, "Hit it." And when he hits it, it goes woof, big, and then boom, it's gone in a split second. And you have to time the release of the shutter with the split second that the flame goes up, and that's how you achieve it. And you walk away that day not knowing whether you got it. And,
yeah, that's awesome.
And when you get the transparency film back and you see that shot, let me tell you something. You run around the room with your arms up like you just won the the Boston Marathon. I mean, there's just no feeling. It's like opening a gift on Christmas morning. I mean, it's just so rewarding. In that respect, film was just magical.
Well, I think you're touching on something really important, Ed, and that's that, like, you know, I I'm not going to argue with you and say that fuel injection is better than a carburetor, but I like to tune my carburetor just like I like to listen to my old records on vinyl.
Yeah.
And looking at an image like this, it's got soul. It's got that story that you just told us. It's in this photo,
Yeah.
and I think I mean, you can argue that the same thing with digital, but I don't think so. I think this has something that doesn't because it was uh, shot with a film camera. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a shot with a Hasselblad, medium format, 2.25 by 2.25. And I invited Gerald Haddoff, fellow photographer friend of mine, out that day because he was shooting for Drag Racing USA. That's Evil. That's out at Ontario. I shot Evil a few times, and it's that was fun. There's interesting story that day. I mean, he landed that thing. He nailed the landing, and I'm driving home and I'm listening to the radio and they're giving the report and said that he crashed when he landed and all that. And I'm like, where was I? I mean, but that's on a Harley. I shot him when he also jumped an American Eagle down at the Coliseum next to the sports arena.
XR50, I think. Looks like.
Yeah, and that's over Datsun's. You jump Datsun. Now look at Evil. I mean, I got to know Evil. You jump Datsun's, you can shoot about probably a couple more cars than if you're shooting LTD Fords.
Yeah, exactly.
That's on the back straightaway going into turn 9 at Riverside. Intentionally shot at a slower shutter speed and intentionally framed to use the guiding lines of the back straight and framing it down in the lower left-hand corner to make it a little bit more, artistic and all. I like that shot. I mean, it's that guy, that driver at Kent, I forget his name. He was not like a Richard Petty or whatever, but just the squareness of that particular body and all that. I don't know. That picture's just, it speaks to me, Oh yeah, Colin Chapman. That's Mario in the Lotus. That's at Long Beach. The
color looks fantastic in this photo.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's transparency again. That was 99% of the time we all were shooting Ektachrome because it had a little bit more film speed. In transparency, all of us shot always Ektachrome, and when it came to black and white, we 99% of the time shot Tri-X, 400 speed, and the higher speed. Of course, it's like higher film speed in a digital. You get more noise. Nothing's changed in that regard,
right?
And but Kodachrome we would shoot on occasion, but Kodachrome was what, ASA 25? That way slow for motorsports. And so you'd only shoot Kodachrome for maybe a car feature or that type of stuff. I mean, that's Riverside. When they changed turn 9, they put a dog leg in it because turn 9 was really, unfortunately, turned out to be over the years very deadly. And a lot of guys would lose brakes or any number of things. And I mean, there's AJ Foyt almost killed himself there in 65, wow. Lost his brakes, turned to the inside of turn 9. They had a depression on the inside of turn 9 at that time, which looking back was like, why would you do that? And you keep it level to the track so you can just slide off. But he dug down, and you can see that crash on YouTube. It's if you've never seen it, it's worth looking up. And I was there the day Rolf Stommelen, Derek Bell, who's a good friend, had just gotten out of a Porsche 935 and turned it over to Rolf Stommelen. And Rolf Stommelen was going down into 9, and the rear wing bracket had broken. and he hit the K rail and moved the K rail probably a good 10, 15 feet, and instantaneously just died. But this is a backup pickup. Of course, this was one of our cars, and this car's been recreated by Dave out at Galpin, and Dave Shooten, and I actually supplied pictures from a feature that I had shot of the interior, underneath, engine compartment, everything. And I want to tell you something, Dave duped that car. If you didn't know it, you'd think it was the original. And the original got junked out in the Arizona desert, long since lost. And my dad and I designed the paint job on that car, and it was a plain Jane red pickup when it came to us. And Folger Ford was the original Ford dealer that was involved. And then when they left the scene, Bert Bachman at Galpin got involved. And that's why Bo had Dave recreate it. But this was, at one time, we had the Justice Brothers All-Star wheel standing team. And we had everybody on under sponsorship, or we were supporting them. This was one of those all-star wheel standing meets. That's Richard Hutchins in the far lane in the Chevy Rebellion, who we also sponsored, and he was out of Florida. But yeah, and that was flash photography. I mean, people don't like to shoot flash photography today, but back then we had to. And I still love flash photography. In fact, people now are rediscovering it because it's so unique, because everybody's gone total I'm
sorry.
Yeah, that shot right there was shot. I love that shot. That's a car that's in our museum. That's the Larry Minor, Gary Beck, 83 world champion top fuel car, rear engine car. That was shot with a Leica monochrome. It's a brand new camera that just came out a couple months ago or whatever. And the detail on that fuel block there, where all the lines are coming out,
exactly,
the scratches, everything. I mean, that's shot. That's shot at f2, wide open for that particular lens. It's the what they call the Oppo Summicron 50 millimeter lens. It's just, and of course, the background just drops out.
It looks fantastic, man.
Yeah, thank
you. Again, for our listeners, our viewers, our audience, Ed, this is edjusticejr.photoshelter.com. Also, check out his Instagram page, which is at edjusticejr, right, Ed?
Right, at edjusticejr.
Okay. And then also you had another black and white only page. And what was that one?
That one is at Leica, Leica, Leica hang on a minute, at Leica Justice.
Okay. All right, Greg, can we pull this down real quick? Let's see how we can. There we go. So Ed, I want to come full circle. I feel a little bit selfish because I'm just kind of picking your brain about this stuff that I'm really interested in, and I know our audience will be as well. But we might be talking above some people's heads about photography. So I want to come back to your journalism career and how you've worked in the media, and how you translated these skills that you developed at a young age into this career, and talk about some more of those milestones that you were alluding to earlier.
Well, I've always loved being part of the media, and of course, I actually the photography got me into that realm. And when I couldn't get the job at Irwindale as the track photographer, because, as I said, my very good friend and mentor had that job, when a guy by the name of Tim Marshall, who passed away about a year ago, another very well-known drag racing member of the media, when he had the job of the track writer, and he left. And when he left that position, Mert suggested to Mel Rick and Dick Diaz, who operated Irwindale, and Irwindale was started by Harry Snyder, the founder of In-N-Out. He was the financing behind it. And Mert said to me, "Would you like the job?" And of course, I just don't say no. Yeah, you know, I mean, look at it. If it doesn't work out, hey, you know what? This is more than I can handle. I mean, but I go, yeah, oh yeah, I'm in high school. Okay, the last thing a male in high school wants to do is write. You know what I mean? English is generally not the, let's talk the old stereotypes. Typically, men are more the math and women are more the English, although, that's not the case. But that's the stereotypes, okay? And so I said yes. So it was my job to write the weekly column for Drag News and National Dragster for Irwindale Drag Strip in high school. Now, that sounds like an easy enough deal, but to a guy who doesn't like to write, man, it's the toughest job I ever had. And again, you had to have discipline. And so what were the toughest weekends was when they'd have the local streetcar competition. Oh my God, what do you say about, Bob Jones, Chevy 2 turned a fantastic run down and beat Leroy Jenkins Charger, through the quarter mile, just, smoking the tires, have mid-track, and you come up and, you use all the verbs and adjectives and the crowd came to their feet as they rolled that Plymouth Barracuda to the line, and as a young guy, before you learn all the tricks, oh God. And I got paid $35 for that and a free meal. And, and I've got those Drag News and National Dragsters. I'm going to do an Instagram post on it because it's a forgotten part of my life. So then I did that. So then, somebody says, hey, you ever thought about doing radio? You got a good voice for radio. And I heard that back in college. Hey, you ever think about getting into radio and all that? And of course, God gave me my voice. It's not something that I, worked on. And so when I got the opportunity to do radio, I started doing that. And then that led into then me being the host of Road and Track Magazine's radio show for over 10 years. I did Car and Driver. I did Motor Trend. The top 4 automotive publications historically in America were Car and Driver, Motor Trend, Road and Track, and Automobile, which Automobile is no longer. And I did the top 3 out of the 4. Automobile was in 4th place. And I almost did Automobile, but we just couldn't come to an agreement. And then I continued to write some stuff, and I just wrote a story for the local SoCal 356 club. And so I still write, and I found out communication skills. I really encourage people to learn how to write. I know it's drudgery. You're not talking to somebody who doesn't understand this, and to learn how to spell, and really, honest to gosh, your basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Just learn those basics, learn them really well, and you're going to be so far ahead of the crowd when it comes to your life. Seriously. I mean, no basic math, know your times tables. My dad drilled this into me, and read a lot. And I know a lot of people don't like to read today because videos made us lazy, but reading, you retain more when you read. It's just the way we're wired. And so people say to me, Ed, how do you know so much? I read a lot. And I found the same thing. Dan Gurney was a voracious reader. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Lino reads a lot, even though he has dyslexia or whatever. People say, they'll be surprised. We have Jay on the show, and there'll be somebody as a guest there, and they go, Jay, how do you know all this stuff? I go, I'm at the bookstore when he buys these books. I've watched him, and I'm buying them too. He reads a lot, and
No, it's
and he
very
had a lot
important.
of retention. So like the service you guys do with the website and all that, which is more the modern model for sure. It's so valuable, and I mean, and of course, I'm a big supporter of traditional media too. I like it all. I mean, I really like it all.
No, I kind of describe it as when you're talking about video and things like that, it's almost there's some value there, but it's like fast food for your brain. When
Yeah, it
you're
is.
digesting, something tactile like a book or a magazine or just an article online. It's to your point, you're going to retain it a lot better. It's going to give your brain a lot more nutrients, if you will.
Well, you see
But
this poster behind me. It says Thurston and the Vanishing Whippet Car. A lot of people don't realize I'm a close-up magician. I actually used to get paid. Oh yeah, I did that as a professional also, and I know I got that. But you really, I mean, what else do you do shoe repair too while you're at it? I mean, but
yeah,
anyway, but I worked a lot of corporate parties. I did a lot of Hell Week parties for college fraternities and that type of stuff. A lot of private parties at people's homes, and I don't do that much of it anymore. But I learned all that magic by reading books. Now today, guys will watch videos, and I'm telling you, it's not the same. It's not easy learning how to hold a deck of cards, put your pinky here, your thumb here, do this, and reading it from a book. It's confusing, but you know what? It's challenging, and it's very rewarding when you learn it, and you do learn it better, I think. But maybe, and I think most of the people that learn the way I did would agree with me, and maybe we are old school. I don't know, but I'm telling you, Kenny Roberts, the famous Grand Prix road racer, told me that when he would train people, he'd have somebody come from overseas, whether it be Japan or Europe or whatever, and he used to live up in the central California area, and he doesn't live there anymore. But he had a dirt track there, and he'd put them on dirt, and they'd go, "Hey, wait, I don't ever plan on riding dirt. Okay, I want to learn how to road race." He said, "Sorry, we start on dirt." Okay. And they go, "Yeah, but he goes, we either start on dirt or I don't train you." And I watched a deal the other day, Wayne Rainey, the same way, who was a Grand Prix champion. And because on dirt, you learn looseness and you learn how to control that. So when you get into that situation on asphalt, it's not a new experience. Now, Kenny is not being old school. And it's like me talking about learning from a book. It's not being old school. It's just a better way to learn. And we're all, one thing you find out by doing magic and doing thousands of shows over several decades is that we all are wired somewhat the same way. Yeah, you might have different political beliefs, and you might, believe differently about this, or you might do that different or whatever. But I'm telling you, at our core, we all are so similar. It's just the way that the human, and then that's why they're able to come up with the Sigmund Freud, all these theories and all this stuff. I mean, it's based on that.
Well, so Ed, to come back to this career that spans a lifetime, you're developing these skills. At this point, I think you were talking about you were in college and you started. You didn't get the job as the track photographer, but you got a similar job where you're writing a column. Wasn't your favorite thing, but here we are. Decades later, after you've worked in radio and you've multiple award winning and all these things, right? When you look back on your career, what are the most poignant points that you can think? Whether that's an award, winning a certain award, or
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. When you talk about winning an award, winning the Motor Press Guild award for best audio visual content, the best of the year Dean Bachelor for audio visual was a big deal because for a couple reasons. Number one, that was sort of the top of the mountain, particularly for radio. And I achieved that. And also, the category at that time, audiovisual, meant that I competed against TV, radio, documentaries, and the internet. And I won against TV, documentaries, and the internet with a radio show. And so, I mean, you know,
That
I say, you know, I go, wow. And I called up the guy who I interviewed on that what I won with, Charlie Hughes, who was the guy that brought Land Rover back to America, and he was a president of Land Rover for years, and he was president of Mazda, and a really great car executive and a very good friend of mine. And I said, man, I want to thank you for being, and he goes, thank me, you did the interview. And I got him, and through the right questions, I got him to reveal, talking about memo writing and how corporate structures work. And it was, you know, because I understand that, you know, I mean, being in the business world. And so I wanted to show something that people generally don't see, and talking about customer satisfaction. And, you know, like customer satisfaction, for an example, you know, having done this, car companies, the only thing that any of these companies like JD Power or whatever measure is the first owner. They don't measure the second owner. So as long as the first owner's experience is good, that's good for the brand. And the first experience means like keeping maintenance costs down. So if we say you only need to change your oil every 15,000 miles, that's good for the first owner. May not be good for the second owner, though. But, you know, so, you know, we talked about that type of stuff and all that. So anyway, so that was a big deal for me. Getting in 2016, the 100th anniversary of the Indy 500, I was given a plaque by the Indianapolis 500 Old Timers Association, which getting into that association was a big deal. And then I was one of 3 people that was given a plaque on the 100th anniversary of the running of the race for my contributions and support of the race. That was a big deal. And sometimes I forget about that. And my daughter Courtney reminds me, because she was there, and she said, Dad, that was a really big thing. I mean, you know.
Well, yeah, not to mention the fact that you know, the other people who were receiving a similar plaque or the same plaque were you were how many years their junior?
Yeah, 20 maybe 20. Yeah, 20.
Yeah.
But anyway, easy 20 in some cases. But, and you know, all the Hall of Fames that we've been inducted into. You know, I mean, I accepted the Founders Award a year ago for my dad at the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame. You know, it's all the book has been a high water mark. I mean, Tom Madigan wrote a beautiful book, which I'm a co-author on. And
where can people find out about the book? Where can they purchase it?
Amazon.com. The book is Legacy of Justice. Make sure you put in Legacy of Justice, and
drop a link in the comment section below.
Yeah, and it's a big book. Some people say, "Man, this is a coffee table book," and they go, "It's heavy." And I go, "Yeah, you're right. No, it's actually a coffee table, but you have to supply the legs." Yeah. But you know, Eddie Wood called me the other day. He got a copy of it, and he called me to tell me, and he said, I want to buy a copy for Dale Inman. And if you don't know who Dale Inman is, he is Richard Petty's cousin, who was his crew chief through his entire career. And I said, well, you know, Lee Petty's in the book, because we sponsored Lee and we sponsored Richard in the beginning of Richard's career. And he goes, no, I know, it's been a topic of conversation. And he goes, man, I just want to tell you what an amazing book. It covers everything. And it's 100 years of history. And we cover even the motorcycles on Daytona Beach, which I want to tell you something. There's not much written about that, but we sponsored Floyd MD, who was the last winner for Indian, a major race for Indian motorcycles, 1949, Daytona 200, 155 entries on the beach, 55 injuries, something like 5 or 3 deaths. I mean, it was
My God.
but
Yeah.
it's covered in the book. So it's a fun book. Getting that book done, and then having people like Eddie Wood, Parnelli and Dan Gurney, Parnelli Jones and Dan Gurney wrote the foreword for it. I mean, having people that really matter call me up and saying this is really one of the all-time great, racing automotive history books, because it covers the dry lakes. I mean, geez, I mean, Curtis Craft, early NASCAR, Garlitz is in there. I mean, so yeah, that's a big thing, and that's a gift that keeps on giving, because the history, it's evergreen, it's timeless. That history is what it is, and so anyway, getting that done, and that took 5 years. That was 5 years of my life. It took Tom 2 years to write it, and it took an additional 3 for the researching the photographs and writing the captions and some of the sidebars, as we call it, where you have these breakout stories. And
so is it mainly your photography in the book?
Well, yeah, actually, and to tell you the honest truth, not all of my pictures are credited to me for a reason. The ones that really sort of meant something to me, I made sure my name was on, but I didn't want it to be an Ed Justice Jr. photo by Ed Justice Jr. photo by Ed. I mean, I'm working on a photo book.
Fantastic.
Yeah, one of many, and obviously those will be all my photos. But the Justice Brothers book, or the Legacy of Justice, the family book, I just didn't think it was. I mean, I did. Like the picture of Dan Gurney and Parnelli that I shot, that's got my credit on it, and other ones again that mean a lot to me that I want to make sure people know. Yeah, I did shoot that picture. Those have my credit. Others will just really say Justice Family Collection, and sort of the catch-all.
I know that you said that this is the first year in a very long time that you're not going to go to Indy, but I mean, do you have any plans on slowing down, or I mean, obviously,
no. I mean, no. No. Roger Penske is my model. Roger Penske's 83.
Yeah,
he'd still be in the pit box as his teams if he hadn't bought the series and the track. And I'm at races all the time. Roger's there, and we, I say hi, and he says hi, and he's always busy, and I don't have any desire to retire. I really don't. I mean, look at Ed Iskandarian. The guy's 99.
I know it.
I mean, and I want to tell you something. He's so sharp. I mean, every time I see Ed, he'll relay stories from 50, 60 years ago about my dad and uncles or me or whatever, and they're dead on. I mean, the guy is blessed. Not everybody is Ed Iskandarian.
No, I can only hope that if I make it to that age, my cognitive function is on par with his.
Well, Wally Parks was the same way. I mean, I when I used to interview Wally, I mean, it was great. It was fun to talk to him because he really, he was there right up until he passed away at 94 or whatever it was. So yeah, pretty amazing.
Ed, we've been talking for almost 2 hours now, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. No, not at all, not at all. That's what I'm saying. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. I have a million more questions about a million more photos, and I'm sure you have a million more stories to tell.
Well, write them down, and give your audience a rest from Ed Justice Jr. for a while, and we can come back sometime.
Exactly. I would love to
down the road. I'd be happy to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to come down.
As long as people are interested, I'm happy. I mean, but yeah, and
100%.
I'd love to have you guys come here. And as I told you before we came on the air, you get a complimentary taco, because my family said if I could eat tacos every day, I would, and that's true.
Well, you are from Southern California.
I've never seen a Mexican restaurant that I didn't like. And I can't tell you how many Mexican restaurants around the area here that are run by the families. And they all know me when I come in. Hey, how you doing? And they go, you want your usual? And I mean, so it's not just one place. So anyway,
I love it. And I will take you up on that offer, Ed. But for now, let's run down one more time. Where can people find out more about what's going on with you, the business, the future, what you guys have going on, etc.?
Okay, so of course the company has a website, justicebrothers.com. That's brothers spelled out. And they also are on Instagram, and you can get the links at the website, Twitter, Facebook, all that. Myself, my primary social media is Instagram, and it's reposted onto Facebook and Twitter from Instagram. One is enough for me, and that's at EdJusticeJR. There's the at Like a Justice, and I wish I could. Justice Brothers, I think, is let's see here. I'll give you their Twitter or their Instagram. It's at Justice Bros, BROS, on for their Instagram handle, and the Like a Justice. And then of course I have a website, edjusticejr.com. And then if you want to try and go over to that photo site that's not 100% done, but it is fun to look at still. That's edjusticejr.photoshelter.com.
Ed, thank you so much for spending some time with us, shedding some light on some fantastic photos and a fantastic career. I know this won't be the last time that we talk, but thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks a lot. And it's great. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor to be on your show with you. Thank you.
Hold on. There we go.
Greg,
yo,
mind is blown. So I know for a lot of our audience, maybe who are not well versed in photography, maybe this was a great learning experience for them, or maybe they'll be inspired to kind of check it out. But for me, I was like totally geeked out on everything Ed was telling me, man. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, I'm sitting there like, I felt like a little kid. I wanted to go run to my display cabinet and pull out all my old film gear and be like, look what I have. You know
exactly,
what I mean? Like,
yeah. The way he talks about it, I get excited about just the nostalgia of it. Cause we've talked about this before. I like old stuff, and that goes for photography equipment as well. But
I mean, I've got so many questions that nobody cares about, but just like,
yeah, I would love to get into the minutia of it and be like, oh, what setting is best here? And
I mean, like, I'd love to ask him, because he's he has experience with all this high-end stuff, and it's like, I've got one of my favorite film cameras that I have is a Ryko. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard the name. They were like a Xerox copier for a while. They changed their like area of expertise, but they've made 35 millimeter cameras, and it's just an old crappy Ryko, and I found a 50 millimeter 1.4 lens for it on eBay for like $12, right? But the quality of that lens so far surpasses, and I want to know if like he thinks the older cameras, the hardware was better.
Right.
I get it. Like, you can spend a ton of money on great lenses now.
Yeah.
But you would think with technology that would bring great lenses at really low prices, and that doesn't seem to have happened.
No. That's an interesting point. I had never considered that. But yeah, man, I kind of want to go dust off my old Maxim and see what I can do. But where do you even get film developed now?
I had a little tab in Google Chrome of online places where you could send it.
Okay. Right.
I tried to get my own little darkroom setup going. And it seems like everybody I talked to that used to have a darkroom, like, had just thrown away all their stuff.
That's the
And
thing, man. Getting the chemicals and
oh yeah, I don't even know if you could get all that stuff now.
Yeah.
But man, I remember in photography class, that was one of my favorite classes in high school.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it really was, and just being in the dark room and hanging out, and I mean, it. Oh man,
Yeah,
like
it was cool. So I was totally geeking out on everything that George was saying, and then my favorite thing about it is he's putting all this out there for people who aren't familiar, right? Like, so let's say that they don't know their history. Well, he's putting it out there for them, and he's packaging it in a way that's easily digested, right? So maybe people don't have time to read a whole article or a whole book about a certain subject or a certain topic, but he's publishing all these photos from his career in motorsports with a nice, like, it's almost an article, really. I mean, those captions that he publishes with his photos, they're pretty lengthy, but it's not too much.
No, I think he is a legitimate 21st century historian.
Yeah.
He is so well adapted to modern media. I think he understands how to get the historian's message across with the smaller bite-sized nuggets that our, ADD generation needs, because there's something shiny here.
Just, give me a 30-second video. Like, well, this isn't exactly a 30-second video, but it's a beautiful, striking image. And the backstory for that image, which is fantastic. And like Ed said, it's exactly what Instagram was created for.
Not for a picture of your dinner. And
exactly. No one cares about your
hashtag Kraft mac and cheese. Nobody, seriously, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was really cool to hear from his wealth of knowledge. I honestly, I could have spent another 2 hours picking his brain about,
absolutely,
like, just one aspect of his career. Like, tell me more about drag racing. He could have told me. He could have sat here and talked to me for another 2 hours just about that. So I don't think this is gonna be the last time that we speak to Ed Justice Jr.
No, I certainly hope not.
Yeah, and next time we'll probably go easy on the photography stuff and go heavy on the drag racing, road racing, Daytona, whatever you guys want us to talk to him about. Drop it in the comment section below, and we'll tailor our message next time.
Because he's got such a wide breadth. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, just the amount of time he puts into his projects, like the dude's a historian. Like I keep saying that, but that word means something.
It does. If we sort of do the same, a similar thing, but he just does it at like such a high level. And when I talk to guys like Ed, it makes me feel lazy, dude. Like, how do these guys get so much stuff done in the same 24 hours I have? They must be hyper efficient or something. But it's impressive to think about everything that he has done and he's currently doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but anyways, it was a fantastic interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed talking to Ed, and like I said, I hope it's not the last time. Before we sign off, Greg, what's going on Engine Labs, bro?
Well, first one, I can almost guarantee 99% of viewers won't care about. It's a cool article. I mean, it really is. It's about a Japanese engine that never came to the U.S.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, it's focused on that. The theory, I think, is applicable to any engine, but it's about the Skyline's RB26 DETT. And a shop up in Washington whose theory is usable power over big horsepower numbers.
Interesting.
It's a very well illustrated theory, because he has different methods, I guess, with the same engine, and they're just so strikingly different. It's not like you're talking, itty bitty differences, or it's really cool. And if you take it for what it is on the grand scheme, it's a really cool article.
Very cool.
But it says RB26 DETT, and I know a lot of people's eyes just glaze over, and because they're like, oh, it's one of those Japanese motors that never came to the US. True, but it's cool.
Well, I'm sure they're not without their merit.
No, they are very cool inline six engines.
Cool. What was the other one?
The other one was, I am having a complete brain blank. Wow.
Well, while you're thinking about that, did you see that video of that GT350 with the Barra engine?
Yes, I did, and I'm so sorry that I missed it because I used to watch Adam LZ a lot, and then I just got real busy with work and just stopped, following all my YouTube people, and it seems like I stopped at the wrong time. I want a Barra engine in the worst way. We had actually talked to Ivan about putting one in the F100 at one point. To the point where we had talked to some Australians and kind of,
really?
I wouldn't say had one lined up, but we had kind of bench race how we would get it here.
Interesting.
And that, he went with the Illuminator. I can't blame him. I mean,
how can I swap one of those into a New Edge?
Well, I am very, very serious. I don't want to pay what they cost right now. But if there were an Australian who were watching who wanted to, find me one cheap and not try to, make a bunch of money off some stupid American who wants, an Australian inline six, I would not have a single issue putting one into the shop.
Why do you like them so much?
They're unique. They're different. I mean, although they're becoming a lot less unique. I mean, look at Adam LZ's, GT500. That's honestly one of the coolest things. I got to go back and just watch the whole series start to finish.
Cool.
Oh, that's cool. It really is. But it's, it's a little tall, a little top heavy, but it's basically a Ford 2JZ. It'll take all the boost you want to throw at it, you hang a, softball sized turbo on it and it'll make, 1,000 horsepower.
What would you put one in?
I've thought about putting one in my SN95. Because apparently the motor mounts aren't anything crazy. I think they're just the standard 300 mounts. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I mean, I have a welder. K members are cheap.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I've seen a lot more hokey stuff.
I'm surprised of the about the modularity, no pun intended, with Fords. I was telling you earlier today that a Coyote will swap right into a New Edge. Use the same motor mount, same everything.
I mean, they're a 4-valve. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I know a lot of people don't like to besmirch the Coyote by saying it's a 4-valve. I mean, it is. You know what I mean?
Motor. I mean,
it is. It's the next progression of the mod motor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just. But yeah, I mean,
what do you guys think? Should we get a project New Edge, the redheaded stepchild of the Ford Mustang fleet, excluding the Mustang too? But yeah. I don't know. I
think that'd be cool.
They're dirt cheap. We'll see.
But anyway. The other article is Holdner's deal talking about the 500 horsepower will split a Windsor block in half myth.
Interesting.
And yes, I say myth because there are quite a few instances where that hasn't happened. And the funny thing is,
it happened to me.
Yeah, and we need to figure out why. And when I say we, I just mean the community, because
my sister's cousin's brother's little cracked his.
Well, the funny thing is, Scott and I were just discussing this the other day, and we can't figure out why. Like, is it the new tuning solutions are easier? Holdner has a couple ideas.
That's crazy. We're publishing a story from Holdner this month on Street Muscle 2. He tested a bunch of different engines with a torque storm blower on it, and he got some interesting results.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool. That's really cool because I mean, torque storms, unique in their one blower fits all.
Yeah. It's like the same head unit and it's just different brackets. It's pretty cool.
So it's really cool to see how that if one engine likes it more than the other. That's a really cool deal.
Yeah. So we got that going up, but that's probably gonna be like a week or two. On Street Muscle, what do we got going on? I'm working on something really fun right now. If you guys watched a couple episodes ago, you will recall Greg and I talking about um, uh, an article series that I'm doing with Dodge and Bondurant. So they've partnered up and they have a whole fleet of really badass Hellcats and Demons and Red Eyes out in the Arizona desert and at the Bondurant School of High Performance. And basically they've invited me to come out and take part in their 3-day road course and a 1-day drag racing course with a Demon. So leading up to that, they also invited me to come out and borrow one of their fleet vehicles. And so in the driveway, I have right down there is a 2019 Hellcat Challenger. And Greg, I got to tell you, this thing's insane, bro.
I know. I'm really bummed that you couldn't come up.
I know, dude.
But I am very glad you didn't get caught in that.
Yeah, I know.
So, that was nasty.
So for those of you who don't know what Greg's talking about, I posted a video just a couple of days ago when I picked up the car, and I was describing this road trip that I was going to go on with the ar. It was a 1,000-mile thrash test, and part of that was going to be going up north of Chandler, Arizona, up to Prescott, where Greg is at, and I was going to visit him. We're going to go for a nice cruise, take some nice photos. Unfortunately, the highway that leads to Greg's place was on fire. So I couldn't really I could have driven around, but it would have been like a 7-hour detour or something. And so I ended up going on a different road trip, but just as long. And so I've been putting this thing through its paces. I'll have it for a couple more weeks, but the article on my initial impressions and my initial review is almost done. And I'll tell you that the list of things that I like about this thing is 10 times longer than the list of things that I don't like about it. And yeah, they're very minor, depending on how you look at it and the purpose of the vehicle that you would potentially buy. But it's going to be a really exciting article. Hopefully we'll have it up sometime next week. But right now, we just wrapped up this article, which I hope to have published by the time this airs, with Alden American. They make coilovers. They make all kinds of suspension products, and basically, it's an article that explores the benefits that a classic car owner would potentially gain by installing coilovers on a car that never had coilovers. You know, substituting them for leaf springs or a hot wound coil and a shock combination. So there's some really insightful information there that I think you guys will like. And yeah, that's what we got going on in Street Muscle.
It's very cool. It's funny because I think a lot of people, when you say coilover, they imagine, the eBay specials. You know,
that's one of those things that we talked about in the article is like, oh, well, I heard coilovers give you a rough ride. It's like, well, they give you adjustability and they give you, but if you purchase something of inferior quality, then
yeah,
maybe,
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, when you're paying $129 for something that from a reputable company costs thousands of dollars, what do you expect?
Better. Yeah,
you get your money's worth if the thing drives 5 miles, right? Like, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, coilovers are because that's such a broad term, right? Coilover.
Yeah.
I mean, all it means is that the coil goes over the strut or the shock, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's literally all that word means.
Yeah. Well, it's come to mean, something with spanner that you adjust with spanner wrenches. Yeah. You can adjust your ride height and your shock rebound and firmness and everything.
Yeah. Single adjustable, double adjustable. Adjustable body versus just straight spring perch adjustability.
Exactly. There's a lot more to it than just days of old, which is interesting because I'm also working on another article right now with the guys at Ride Tech, because they offer a bunch of different systems for a bunch of different cars, and they offer obviously their suspension packages where they'll come with coilovers, and then they have the same suspension package where it's made to come with airbags. And so we'll kind of dive into the pros and cons of both and which is right for who. So,
well, I'm interested to read that, because when I think airbags, I think slam tucked,
exactly.
and I understand that an air spring is a valid form of spring.
Exactly.
But when I hear air, I think
I think mini trucks.
Yes, scraping and frames, and that's what air is to
which
me.
are totally cool. I like those, man.
Yeah.
The mini truck craze is cool. Let's bring it back.
I had an S10, and all I wanted to do was drag race it.
Well, yeah,
it was slow as dirt, but
so that's what we got going on. Keep an eye on Street Muscle's Facebook page, and of course streetmusclemag.com. Check out enginelabs.com. Check out powerautomedia.com, and you'll see some really cool updates from my trip with this Bondurant car, and you'll get to see Greg and I together in person soon, which is cool. But thanks for watching, guys. You can find us here next week, Friday, noon Pacific time, same place, same channel. We'll catch you next time.